The theme for December is the journey of becoming. And we're looking at this as the next step in our unfoldment here. Today's talk is Surrender is Action. So just in that title alone, we know that surrender is not a passive thing. Surrender often takes a lot of work to allow ourselves to get to that point of surrendering, of letting go of something. You know, we have this ego mind, this ordinary consciousness that likes to keep things the way they are, that really doesn't like to let go, that really doesn't like to release things, because in that letting go, there's an appearance that chaos might erupt from it, that if I let go of it, I'm no longer in control of it. And the ego is all about wanting to keep things status quo. It likes to keep things just the way it is. The ego always wants to, it always seeks to get. It wants and it gets, and it likes to keep things so that it feels comfortable. This aspect of our personality, this ordinary consciousness that we work at in much of our lives, seeks to keep things level and even. And so it wants control. But there is within that a false sense of control. That the ego wants to keep things going in that way that allows it to willfully hold on to things, to willfully keep things the way they are, to keep that status quo going. And so the ego, with its wanting and its need to get and its willfulness, doesn't allow for us to surrender. But if we can step out of that ordinary consciousness and get to a level of universal consciousness, of the collective consciousness that is moving through us all the time, but takes a little bit more effort sometimes to get to it. We have to do actual practices to get to that soul consciousness, that universal consciousness that is moving through us. This is where we simply know. We know that we know, and we can't unknow what we know when we're working at a soul level. This is where willingness takes place. So we have our ego level that is willfulness, and our soul level that is willingness. And in willingness, everything is possible. When we can work at a level of willingness, then we know that things are possible, that things can shift and change in our lives from that level of being open to something being different, to releasing our control of the way it is and the way we think it has to be, and allowing ourselves to move into a space of openness and receptivity. I've been reading the book, The Wisdom Pattern by Father Richard Rohr. He's one of the modern day mystics that I love to read his work. He has a great blog, I get it every day, that is just phenomenal. And in his book, The Wisdom Pattern, he talks about order, disorder, and reorder. And so we're going along in our lives and everything seems to be in order. And then something happens where things become in disorder. And that disorder allows us an opportunity to reshape things, to refigure things out, to reorder them in a way that works better. I think our pandemic has been our disorder. We were going along in quite a nice way, I think, just kind of moving along. And then all of a sudden, mid-March, our world shuts down. And we have to begin to live in that discomfort, in that disorder. And how many of you felt at that time that I just want things to be back to normal? I just want to control things. I don't want to be sitting here in this fear and this unknown. And what if this happens? And what if that happens? And am I going to have this? You know, with the supply shortages that we seem to have all of a sudden, and the unknown way that the virus was working through people, whether we were going to be getting it, was it airborne? Did you get it by touch? Are you going to get it when you go to the store? Do we have to wash everything down? All of these things created a huge sense of disorder in our lives. And now that we're coming for what appears to be closer to the end of it, there is an opportunity for us to reorder our lives, to go from that disorder into something that really is working for us. And so this is a great time that we have in our lives right now where we can actually begin to create something new. And so how do we do that? How do we actually begin to create something new? In the book, The Living the Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes, he has an entire chapter entitled The Great Surrender. And in that chapter, he spends quite a bit of time exploring these ideas of tapping into that universal consciousness that is moving through us. This is not that race consciousness that is driven by the ego and fears and doubts and things like that. But this is that universal high-level consciousness, that spiritual consciousness that is moving through all of creation. This is our opportunity to tap into that. And how do we begin to do that? How do we begin to actually move from this idea of disorder into this idea of reordering and what is possible in our lives? Like I said, in the book, The Wisdom Pattern, Richard Rohr says this. He says, chaos often precedes great creativity. Darkness creates a desire for life. Faith actually precedes great leaps into knowledge. That's the good news. Our uncertainty is a doorway into the mystery, a doorway into surrender, a doorway into the path that is often called faith. So how do we begin to develop that faith? How do we begin to actually catch a glimpse of that? Well, this is the secret that has been known by mystics throughout the ages. From the oldest religious traditions that we have an idea that comes forth about who and what we really are. In our Science of Mind principles, the very first declaration of principles that Ernest Holmes wrote says that we believe in one living spirit almighty, one indestructible, absolute, self-existent cause. That one manifests itself in and through and as all creation, but it's not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of the living spirit. So we believe in one, that there's only one thing happening out there. And we believe that we are all an emanation of that one, that every bit of creation is that one. Now there's a basis for us to begin to develop our faith. If we can truly grasp and understand that principle, then we can begin to understand and build that faith and create that life that is led by surrendering and willingness and openness to exploring what is there for us to learn and to grow into and to become. So, as I said, the great mystics of the ages have known this. It has been kept a secret from a lot of people for several millennia. Back in ancient India, when the Hindus were studying, there is a book called the Bhagavad Gita. And in the book, the Bhagavad Gita, it is written, Tat Tavam Asi. Tat Tavam Asi. Thou art that. Thou art that. In other words, I am that thing. You are that thing. That one power, that one presence. Tat Tavam Asi. In ancient Hebrew, we have the story of Moses. And Moses appears in front of a burning bush that appears to not be consuming itself. It just burns and burns and burns. And at this bush, Moses says that God spoke to him. And when he asked God what God's name was, God responded, Ayah, Asher, Ayah. The ancient Hebrew. For I am that I am. Ayah, Asher, Ayah. This is the greatest secret that has been hidden right in plain sight for us throughout all millennia. I am that I am. Everything that is within me, everything that is within you, is nothing but an emanation of the divine. And when we can really begin to grasp that, we can really begin to understand that and allow that to lead our lives, then our lives really begin to change. It could appear rather egotistical of me to say that everything that the Spirit is, I am. People may have a reaction to that. In fact, people have had a reaction to that over many millennia. People have been persecuted for saying that, which is another reason why they kept it secret for so long. You know, when Gutenberg started printing the Bible, and he put these words in there, things began to change. And the result of that change were many, many persecutions of people by religious organizations, because they were beginning to understand this is not just for one person. This is not just for the high scholars. This is not just for the priest. This is not just for those who have devoted their life to studying it. This is actually truth for everyone. I am that I am. Tat, tavim, asi. I am that I am, and thou art that. When Jesus studied with the Essenes, he learned these truths, and then he applied these truths in his ministry. These ideas did not make him egotistical. In fact, if anything, they humbled him even more. In my experience, I find that the closer I get to Spirit, the closer I seem to understand the true nature of the divine, the more humble I become, where humility becomes a part of my daily life. I often find, like I said, I find this counterintuitive. It's like, I would think if I'm thinking I'm God, then I should be more egotistical. But in actuality, I become more humble. Because I become awed by the magnificence of Spirit. I become awed in my faith. I become awed by how Spirit just works through everyone so beautifully. And when I'm sitting in an attitude of awe and wonder, then my life is unfolding beautifully, easily, effortlessly. I had an experience this weekend where things seemed to be very challenging at first. And I just went back in and sat with spiritual truth that I know. And all of it, every single aspect of it, worked out not only perfectly, but much better than I could ever have imagined. And every time I have one of these little experiences, my faith is enhanced. My faith is developed. My faith is actually increased in such a way that it becomes awe-inspiring. And I become more humble with the workings of Spirit through my life. So as I said, in the Living the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes has this chapter called The Great Surrender. And he says that we need to start with a beginner's mind. This idea of what Jesus said was, be little children and come unto me as children. The Buddha talks about the beginner's mind in most of his teachings. Come to me with a beginner's mind. There's an idea that comes along with that beginner's mind of non-resistance, where I don't react to the chaos around me. I don't resist it. I don't try to control it. I don't try to force it into a different shape or form, but I don't resist it. There is a surrender in there that is so powerful and so profound in my life that things really begin to shift in me. You know, our scientists use this same principle. They create a hypothesis of something about a question that they have, and they write this question. They don't go into the question with, I'm going to make it work this way. They go into the question with, let's see how this unfolds. Let's see what happens when we do this experiment. So all of our experiences in life lead us to a greater understanding of the power and the presence of the divine when we surrender, when we don't try to control them, when we allow things to work themselves out, then things really begin to take off in our lives. We can really begin to see those changes through some of our spiritual practices. When we sit in meditation, when we are simply doing as the Bible tells us, to be still and know. To be still and know. What is it we're knowing there? We're not knowing that I can control things. We're knowing that the presence of the divine is active in every situation. By being still, we've stopped our activity. We've taken our willfulness out of the situation and opened up to a willingness to allow it to unfold. And so we have all of this working through us all of the time. And it is greatly enhanced when we can become quiet. Set aside the chattering ego mind and tap into that soul consciousness that knows what it knows and can never unknow it. Be still and know. Our lives unfold beautifully and effortlessly and easily when we take that idea that we have to do something to make it happen. When we go from chaos into order. When we step outside of our normal human activity and quiet our mind, there's a place for spirit to work there. And it works so beautifully and so effortlessly. And so this is our opportunity at each moment, is to just simply take these ideas of non-resistance, of the beginner's mind, of coming onto a situation as a child, setting aside our willfulness, our need to control, our desire to make things happen, our need to set that aside and open up to what's available to us through spirit. And so let's just take a moment here and turn within. Let's anchor these truths in prayer. Anchor this in that sense of spirit that knows. Tapping into our soul and releasing our ego. And if you're comfortable, just close your eyes. Take a few conscious breaths as we turn within. So right here and right now, I know that there is only one. And oh, what a magnificent one it is. This power, this presence, this divine creative energy that is moving through all of life, that is bringing forth into creation everything as a perfect and unique emanation of itself. This one is boundless, abundant. It is filled with this dynamic, creative life force that wants only to express itself in the most perfect and unique ways. I know this one is within me, as I know this one is within each person. For we are all perfect manifestations of this one, endowed with that creativity, that love, that intelligence, that abundance, that wisdom. This is the truth of who and what we are. And so in knowing this, I speak my word, that it is moving through each one of us, allowing us to become that which we are already. To open fully to the expression of the divine through us. To open our lives and our hearts and our minds to this great unfoldment of life that is moving through into formation in each and every one of us right here and right now. And I know that as our fears and doubts and our needs to control pop their heads up, that we can simply turn within and be still and know. Turn within with a willingness to surrender to that divine intelligence. I am so, so grateful to know this. I'm so grateful to feel this. I'm so grateful to see it operating in my life and the lives of all the others around me. For I know that truly we are all blessed by this collective consciousness. And so I simply release this word into the law, into that creative mind that always says yes, that knows no limitations, that has no boundaries. You simply let it go, and I let it be. And so it is. Amen.